Talk about alcohol, sort of my experience with it, and particularly how that experience for me has been helpful as I've gone through one of the hardest times in my life. So my dad was not a drinker. I never saw my dad drink at all. And my dad was very adamant about, how you don't need it. You don't need it for a good time. You don't need it to relax. He was a teacher. He was an extraordinary man. It's like my favorite man. He was an incredible dad. But I pushed back, father-son stuff. He'd say, hey, you should marry someone like this. And I'd go the exact opposite. You don't drink. And then quite a few years in my life where I was drinking pretty consistently, going out, having fun. For those of you that know, it just becomes part of all social stuff, all kickback, relax, sports. And my kids were on the way. And I also started to kind of pump the brakes prior to this, but when they were on the way, I really had to look at, who do I want to be for them? What kind of dad? And I thought about my dad, and I just knew who I was going to get. Consistent, reliable, available, loving. My dad didn't drink. So I really didn't want my kids to have that experience of the opposite of that, where it's like, dad's getting a little crazy, he's getting a little wild, maybe he's getting a little impatient, getting a little angry. I really took on looking at when I would drink, how much I was drinking. One of the big things that happened for me was that at some point somebody bet me, just many, many, many years ago. Somebody said, I bet you can't do 90 days without alcohol. And at that point in my life, that was actually a real challenge, real confronting. And I did it. In the course of doing it, I actually went on a couple of dates, which were sort of eye-opening in the sense of connecting with somebody and not having that to lean on. And that was interesting. And that brought up some, anxiety and some nerves, but it was also cool to know that I could actually go on a date without having booze needed in that date. And I also felt better. I was sleeping better. My mood was better. And I think one of the big things for me was that I had to step away from it long enough to know that. I think a lot of us think that we're the same, whether we've had a few drinks or not. But I think you got to step away from it long enough to notice. You can't just do, I did a week, dry January, whatever it is. I think you got to go a longer time and really be conscious of the difference it's making. And so for me, I was able to see that. And then I did a year without any alcohol. And now I'm very, very, very strict on when I have drinks at all. That was my journey with it, right? I had to get to a place where for me, I was I'm better when I don't have any. And if I'm going to have my kids, I don't want them to get that version. I don't want them to get the hungover version. I don't want them to get the couple of drink version where I'm just a little bit more tired. Because when I'm tired or when I'm hungover, I'm not as patient. I'm not as kind. I'm not as available. I'm not as interested. When it comes to going through a divorce, a separation, when it comes to all the emotions in this, I'm not a fan of alcohol at all in this scenario. Beyond that, everybody's got to do their own looking. You got to look at your own situation and say, hey, do I drink too much? Do I lean on this? And if so, see what it looks like to step back and just test it against that and see how you feel. As dads too, I just think the amount of energy and effort, especially for me, old ass dad, right? The amount of energy it takes for me to show up for my kids in a way that I'm actually proud of. I can't do that with booze in the system, man. I can't do that coming off of a night of drinks. And I end up feeling really, really bad because I feel like it's not fair to them. You got to do you at the end of the day. But I wanted to share a little bit about kind of my journey with this.